ignorance and fear and anger and hatred, lust and greed, by goodness. It's so easy to think about evil as just evil. It's so easy to think about it as something that is so separate from us. Oh, that's really evil. That person's really evil. Like, oh, they're a cow and I'm a human, or they're a monkey and I'm a human, or, we're different species. Nobody has to worry I'm going to start to moo, or that I'm going to swing from the branches. Like, we know I'm a different species. But what this beautiful story reminds us is that evil isn't always like that. Yeah, we do have, in history some scary stories of individuals who just seem to be wired wrong. Mental illness compounded with severe trauma in childhood, whatever it may be. We definitely have had instances in history of a few people like that. But what this story reminds us of so powerfully is that most of the evil that's perpetuated in the world, it's not about someone who's evil to the core, or a whole different species than we are. But it's actually about people who have simply allowed one or more of these 10 heads to grow on them. The heads of our ego and our greed and our lust and our anger and our hatred and our fear. And that when we allow these heads to grow, like Ravan had 10 heads. So when we allow those heads to grow on us, we take on those demonic energies. Ravan, who today people, they burn his effigies. It's this whole thing, this demon, evil, awful king. He was an incredible scholar. He was a brilliant Vedic scholar. It wasn't like, oh yeah, since childhood, he's been killing cats and lizards and birds, and everybody knew he was going to turn out rotten. It wasn't like that. He was incredibly devoted and dedicated and performed intense sadhana and tapasya and got a lot of wisdom. The problem is these 10 heads. And I'm so interested, in when you study what those 10 vices are, different people actually give you different lists. If you go online and you want to see what are actually the 10 heads of Ravan, there's some that always overlap. Lust and greed and ego and hatred and attachment and delusion. And these are the really ubiquitous ones. They're in everybody's list everywhere. But then there's some that some lists have and others don't. And what to me is so interesting is that one of them that seems interestingly to be across the lists, even where there's other differences, is buddhi. Now, buddhi means intellect. It's usually a good thing. We're always talking about increasing your buddhi, and we pray and we do sadhana. We want to increase our buddhi. We want to increase our intellect. But here it is listed in these 10 vices, 10 heads. Because even our intelligence, if misappropriated, can actually be quite a force for evil. Some of the most evil people in the world have been those who in many cases were the most intelligent. Not the stupid ones, not the mentally challenged ones, not the mentally ill ones. So I always find it interesting. Unequivocally we can say, yeah, greed is bad, envy's bad, hatred's bad, but intellect? And it just reminds us of how precious and tenuous that line is between dharma and adharma, righteousness and lack of righteousness. And that it's really about not letting ourselves get co-opted, get hijacked from our path by these other vices. So it's a beautiful night to really rededicate our intellect, the power of our mind that can be our best friend, that can bring us to meditation, bring us to sadhana, bring us into seva, bring us to satsang, bring us toward compassion and giving and serving and self-inquiry. But that same mind that can also get completely co-opted by these other forces. And no matter how smart we may think we are, it doesn't inoculate us from those forces of darkness. So it's really a call to constantly recheck in and re-remind ourselves. Where am I using my energy? What am I letting myself get pulled toward or pulled away from? So usually we begin with a question that comes in advance from our online audience, but this evening, time's a little bit short. We had a very expansive and extensive arti, and it's the last night of the Ram Leela, so I want to make sure to let you all go on time to get there for anyone who is interested in going. So I'm happy to just open it up right from the beginning to any questions that anyone here might have. Yes.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Can you tell us a bit about your personal sadhana, how it started and how it evolved through the years?
Sure. My personal sadhana, he asked about, how it started and how it's evolved over the years. So sadhana, for those of you new to these Sanskrit words, sadhana literally means spiritual practice. It's a blanket umbrella term for really anything that we're doing that's bringing us closer to the divine, that's purifying our mind, helping us walk farther on our path. So typically sadhana includes meditation, prayers, chanting, yoga, selfless service, all of these different things. But a lot of it also is internal work. So my sadhana, on a deeply spiritual level, I had a lot of emotional and psychological life sadhana before I came here, but I won't go into all of that now. But my spiritual sadhana started actually after I came here and after I had this really powerful experience. I kind of went backwards. Most of us embark on a path of meditation and prayer, seva, chanting, yoga, and then slowly, by grace, we start to have divine experiences and connect more and more with the divine. I actually went backwards. I had done no sadhana of any kind of, anything that you would recognize as sadhana. I was not religious. I was not even someone who identified as spiritual. I was an academic. I was a scientist. I was struggling in a lot of ways in my own life with my own childhood history and the ramifications it had on my psyche and my relationships and my schoolwork. I was in the middle of a PhD program. But I was not doing any kind of meditation or prayers or chanting. I actually had always felt like I was sort of disqualified in a way from being spiritual because I didn't feel like I was pure enough. I knew some people who were spiritual, not many, but some. And I always felt like my mind wanders. I was taken, before I came to India, I was taken to a couple of different programs with different Indian gurus and masters who had come. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they come with some frequency. And so I was taken to a couple of these, and I never really felt anything. I remember my favorite part of all of them is, very embarrassing as it is to say 30 years later, 27 years of which I've spent living in India. But my favorite part of all of them was the really yummy chai that you got, because it was so much better than Starbucks made. I always liked chai, but I would always, get it at Starbucks. And at these Indian programs, the chai was so good. And I remember all I would think about before we would go was, God, I hope they have chai. And like, how quickly can I get out of the chanting or the prayers or whatever's going on and go out and drink some chai? So I was definitely not doing any kind of sadhana. I come to India, I have this incredibly powerful experience of divine oneness, awakening, transformation, whatever words you use. There's no words that actually work, so you can pick any word you want. But that spiritual transformation, that experience of absolute oneness with the universe, of absolute perfection in the universe, of seeing myself, my capital S self, as one with the universe. And it was so extraordinary that it transformed my life. And that initial experience lasted many, many, many weeks. It's not that it didn't dip ever, but pretty much it lasted nearly continually for weeks. And it wasn't until, and I kept having more powerful experiences, they just kept building on each other. So I was living in this really nearly constant, not 100% constant, but nearly constant experience of just God intoxication. I mean, all I could say most of the time was just, oh my God, it's so beautiful, and oh my God, it's so beautiful. And I just had tears pouring down my eyes. And at some point, and I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at some point, that the intensity of that experience started to come down. And I started to find myself once again afflicted by not the extent to which I had been before, but still some of the same patterns of fear or anxiety or doubt or whatever would arise. And I knew that I needed to somehow bring back that experience, to get back in the river of life and of love. And that was really when I found out about sadhana, because I went to Pujya Swamiji and I said, help, what to do? And he said, meditate. And so I started meditating. And I noticed that people did puja, worship ceremony, but I had no idea what puja was. I had no idea how to do it, but I had all of these beautiful images of the divine that I had gotten in different places, and they sat on an altar. And I thought, I'm going to do puja. But again, remember, I had no idea. I mean, I had seen it a couple times, but no one had ever actually explained it to me of we offer the fire and the water and the earth and the air. Nobody had ever done that. I just saw people offering different things to the divine. So I had these really pretty little crystals that a very dear friend of mine had given me when I had come to India. And it was the only thing I felt like I had of any worth. And so I would lay the pictures of the divine on my temple, and I would just place like crystals on the different pictures and do my puja. Again, I didn't know what it meant, but it was just from my heart. It was just, I'm doing something, I'm offering something, here's the only thing I have, and so I'm offering it. I heard Pujya Swamiji once speaking. There was a group that had come in from America, actually, and he was talking about the power of mantra. And especially mantra jap, doing japa with your mala with the mantra. And I thought, I need that. And at the end, he gave the whole group a mala, a Rudraksh mala. And so I got one because I was hanging out with that group. And I thought, I need a mantra. So I asked Pujya Swamiji for a mantra. And he said, okay, in some time. He didn't say how long I would have to wait. Turns out I had to wait 2 years. But I decided that I was not going to spilling all my secrets, decided that I was not going to let my guru's reluctance to give me a mantra keep me from doing japa. That if it was this great thing, even if I wasn't yet worthy of a real mantra given by the guru, I was just going to make one up. And so for almost 2 years, just about 2 years, I chanted, I love you, Krishna, on my mala. In English, not in Sanskrit. Didn't know any official mantras. But I did my japa with, I love you, Krishna, I love you, Krishna. So this was how my sadhana began. Over 27 years, it has obviously changed, but one part has not changed. And that's my commitment to authenticity in it. Because I had to kind of make it up as I went along for the beginning part, I did whatever felt like it was the truest to my heart. My heart was the only thing that I had to listen to. And I didn't have a Hindu heart. I didn't have a heart that spoke Sanskrit. I didn't have a heart that knew any mantras or any prayers or any scriptures. But I had to just trust my heart. And of course, trust God. And know that it would be okay. And that piece of making sure that I don't get stuck in the ritual of it has stayed really true. So for example, now when I do japa, and of course I now have a real mantra given by my guru, but when I do my japa, you're doing your mantra, you're doing your mantra, you're doing your mantra, and you do typically a certain number of malas, a certain number of rounds on a mala. And for me, what I notice is, every once in a while, my mind wanders. Every once in a while, I find I'm doing this on my mala, but my mind is actually somewhere else. And the moment I realize that, the academic in me comes back, and I actually sort of make myself go back. It's like a teacher who says, go back and redo the ones you missed. So I try to figure out approximately how long I've been distracted, and I actually make myself redo them. Like, I won't give myself credit for 10 rounds of a mala if I've only done 8.5 of them with my full attention. But if it's going to be 10 rounds, or it's going to be 5 rounds, or it's going to be 20 rounds, or it's going to be whatever it is, I want to make sure that I was actually present for every one of them. So that part has stayed. And my sadhana now includes meditation, it includes japa, it includes a lot of seva. I also do yoga asanas, but I think of them actually as much more for my physical body and kind of my mental stability than as my spiritual sadhana. I know it benefits me spiritually as well, but just in my sense. So yeah, so that's what my sadhana looks like. Yeah. And it's just gotten deeper and deeper and deeper and more beautiful. But it's really important to me to keep it real. To just make sure that you're there and you're present. And that it doesn't become just about a ritual. Just about doing something to do it. Good. Other questions?
How can we combine our spiritual path or our sadhana, I didn't know the word, I just learned it, with the fact that we have a very, very ill, beloved animal we need to sacrifice?
How to combine our sadhana with the fact if we have a very ill and very beloved pet, an animal we need to put down. Well, our sadhana is that which actually brings us from body to soul. So the first few minutes of most of our sadhana is all about okay, get yourself comfortable and, are you balanced? Are you okay? Can you breathe? And the first few moments you tend to notice if your stomach is too full or too empty or if you've got a kink in your back. But slowly, 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 you drop inward. You drop inward. And it's not that the kink in the back disappears, it's just that the awareness is pulled inward. And it's pulled away from the physical body into an experience of, for me it is an experience of spaciousness, of a spaciousness that just expands and expands and expands. And there's an experience of kind of melting into that spaciousness in which the very borders and boundaries of what I think of as self dissolve. And then you keep dropping and dropping and going deeper and deeper and deeper inward. And in that place, regardless of what that inner state feels like to you, because I hesitate to share that because everybody's experience is different, and I don't want people thinking, oh, well, I have a different experience, so it's wrong or less good. It's just different. If you ask 20 people what being in love feels like, you'll get 20 different answers. It's all right. It's just different. So, but as you drop into it, the one thing that's true across the board is it's an experience of self that isn't limited to the body. It's an experience that enables sages and saints and mystics and masters to drop their bodies, even in the midst of what we would look at and consider great pain, but with radiant light on their faces, with full radiant presence. And you think, my God, so many of them, they refused painkillers, they refused everything, because they were so able to just drop into a place that is not That's Ravan going up in flames. The more noise, the better, right? So they're able to drop into that place that isn't body. They are able to drop into that place that doesn't die. And so as you do sadhana and drop into that space, you should be able to access a place that isn't the body. And to know that that is true, whether you're a human being, whether you're an animal. It's not only humans that have a soul. Animals have one. And so allow that not body in you, that soul, that spirit of you, to connect with the soul, the spirit of your beautiful animal friend. To know that the body is in pain, sick, decrepit, disintegrating, doing what matter does, disintegrates. But that you're connected on a level that isn't just body. And that you're not killing him or her, but you're just helping them drop that body so that you can connect as soul. Yeah. And also, lastly, the other thing that sadhana does is it helps us get detached. Attachment and the delusion that comes from attachment. It's interesting, the Sanskrit word moha is defined typically as attachment, but also frequently as delusion. Same word, but two different English definitions, attachment and delusion. So it's the delusion that arises out of attachment and the attachment to our delusions. And so your sadhana helps you pull out of that so that you're not attached to the physical form and you can connect with soul and spirit. Beautiful. If there's one more question, we have time for one more if there is. Yes.
What are the biggest mistakes you have done on your journey, spiritual journey?
Biggest mistakes I've made on my spiritual journey. Oh God. That's not a quick question. I honestly can't even count them. Because the biggest mistakes are always internal. I mean, I haven't broken any vows. There's no juicy story of that, that I could say, oh yeah, I vowed to this, but I broke that. So there's no mistakes on that external level. Sure, I've lost my temper. Sure, I've said things and behaved in ways that I later thought, oh, not who I want to be in the world. But the biggest mistakes are the internal mistakes. The biggest mistakes are the mistakes of forgetting that it's all in God's hands. Of starting to think that it's actually up to you. That you're actually something. That you actually can make things happen. That illusion that somehow you know better than God, that you're going to just fix this situation that God has created. Those are the stuff that the biggest mistakes come from. They're not the outer manifestations. Externally, I've been pretty good. I get an A in good behavior. But internally, the mistakes are, we surrender to the divine. When you take vows of sannyas, it's a vow of surrendering, a full surrender. My life is just for you, just dedicated to you. And then the mind starts in again. What's in it for me? What am I going to get? And it gets very subtle. It may not be money, it may not be a car, it may just be respect or appreciation or someone who likes you. But it's still the same. It's still that sense inside that I'm not full enough, whole enough, complete enough, that I somehow need to manipulate an external situation in order to get something I need. And what that means is I don't trust fully. It means I'm not fully surrendered. So those moments arise. Thankfully, they get a lot fewer and farther between as the years go by. But to me, those are the biggest mistakes, are the moments that I forget. Oh yeah, God has got this under control. Oh yeah. The driver of my chariot knows exactly where we're going. I don't need to backseat drive. Oh yeah. Everything that happens for a beautiful reason. Oh yeah. And that doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean it feels beautiful at the time. I'm not whitewashing over difficulties. It may become beautiful only when you step far enough back. You know, if you've ever been to an art museum, beautiful art museum with beautiful pieces of art, in many of them, they'll put a bench or even something on the floor to show you where the appropriate distance is from that particular piece of art so that you can enjoy it the best. Some of them you want to get really close up. Some of them you want to be right up there and see it all. But for some beautiful pieces of art, you actually have to be kind of across the room. And only then do you really get it in its fullest beauty. And so when I say that everything happens for a beautiful reason, I don't mean it feels good always at the time. But I mean that when we get able to step far enough back, we're able to see the beauty. So the biggest mistakes I think that I've made are the moments in which I forget. Oh yeah, this is one of those times when you've just got to step back. Or oh, this is one of those times you've got to get in up a lot closer in order to see really what's wanted of you in that moment. So I hope that answers your question. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful Dusshera evening. I look so forward to being together with you all again tomorrow. I believe that after the beautiful, expansive ceremonies of the last few days, we will most likely be back to our regular timing of 6:30 for satsang from tomorrow. And so much love to all of you and all of our beautiful family joining us from all over the world through this gift of technology.